So I think that by this point, we can all agree that if Sweet Baby Inc. is involved in your video game, it is going to suffer in a variety of ways, either financially, either due to its player base that is virtually non-existent, or because people are roasting it online and dissuading people from buying it because Sweet Baby Inc. is involved. Gamers everywhere hate Sweet Baby Inc. They hate that Sweet Baby Inc. pushes diversity, equity, and inclusion at the expense of certain demographics. They're constantly trying to attack white people, get people canceled, and then getting support from media shills across the space like GameSpot and Kotaku, sparking controversies left and right with no end in sight. But we knew that eventually Sweet Baby Inc. would be recognized by the big dogs, and I'm sure that that's what they were hoping would happen too, but I'm sure that they never expected that this would be the way in which they would be recognized. If you take a look at this IGN article, we're going to find out some spicy news about Warner Brothers, because Warner Bros. Says the failure of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League contributed to a $200 million hit to revenue. That is such an absurd amount of money. And being that Suicide Squad came from one of the most renowned game developers in the industry, who made one of the best superhero video game franchises ever with the Batman Arkham games, only to then release a cop-out video game with Sweet Baby Inc.'s fingerprints all over it, ruining the game from the inside out narratively, bringing about some of the cringiest dialogue that you can see in a video game, and completely destroying people's interest in it, which made it a financial flop, the biggest financial flop in video game history. But let's read this article so that you guys can have more context, and then we're going to get into some of the other video games from Sweet Baby Inc. and see how they're doing financially and critically from people who have actually bothered to play them. But it says right here, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has disappointed Warner Bros. Discovery, owner of developer Rocksteady, to the tune of a $200 million hit to revenue. Again, this is an insane amount of money. Who knew that having Sweet Baby Inc. involved in your video game could cause such a disaster? But this is where we are. Reporting its Q1 financial results, Warner Bros. Discovery said its game's revenue declined significantly as a result of a tough comparison with last year's best-selling video game Hogwarts Legacy. But I don't know why they thought that Hogwarts Legacy's hype could be matched. I don't think that that was ever going to happen, especially since people really love the Justice League a lot more than they love the Suicide Squad. Based on appeal alone, if you're going to make a game about them killing the Justice League off, that would probably turn off a lot of people, including myself. I mean, I did give the game a try, but was ultimately disappointed by the extremely boring gameplay and very, very cringe dialogue. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League generated significantly lower revenues compared with those generated by Hogwarts Legacy during the same 3-month period, the company said. Gee, I wonder why. But in a follow-up investor-focused call, Warner Bros. Discovery boss David Zaslav himself called the release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League disappointing. Ouch. Imagine being Rocksteady and being told that your game, your colossal flop video game, was such a disappointment to Warner Brothers because they were on top for so long. So many years Rocksteady was at the top of their game, making the best DC Universe video games on the market. But it goes on to say, before Warner Bros. Discovery Chief Financial Officer Gunnar Wittenfels detailed an impairment charge the company absorbed as a result of the game's failure. That's insane. Quote, starting with studios, the $400 million plus year-over-year decline during Q1 was primarily due to the very tough comp we faced in games against the success of Hogwarts Legacy last year in the first quarter, in conjunction with the disappointing Suicide Squad release this past quarter, which we impaired, leading to a $200 million impact to EBITDA during the first quarter, Wittenfels said. EBITDA stands for Earnings Before Interest, Taxes, Depreciation, and Amortization, and this looks to be just as disastrous as we expected. Panned by critics upon launch, extremely low player numbers on Steam. Some of the frustration stems from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League not being another Batman game from Rocksteady, despite the fact it is set within the Arkhamverse, but that's just the beginning. That's only scratching the surface of why people didn't like it. It's also because they ruined Batman's legacy. Kevin Conroy's legacy destroyed Batman's character in that game, gave him one of the worst send-offs imaginable. The dialogue, storytelling, narrative design, everything. It was just a disaster through and through, with slightly enjoyable gameplay that gets old very, very fast. A DEI-fueled pile of garbage. That's all it is. And there are other games that are suffering in much the same way. People aren't interested in Sweet Baby Inc. video games, and Warner Warner Bros. Discovery is just starting to realize that. But those of us in the know who have been paying attention to Brutus's progress with DEI detected, as well as other people in the gaming space who are actually paying attention to everything going on, we can track some of these video games and how they're doing financially and with their player base. If you want to take a look at some of these games on this list, there are plenty of examples of video games that have failed due to Sweet Baby Inc. involvement. For example, let's take a look at Suicide Squad. What is the review count for this game? Well, it's mixed right now, recent reviews. All reviews say mostly positive, but there are only 5,000 reviews. That means that people did not bother to play it. This is a rock steady game. This is supposed to be an insanely amazing, popular video game, but no, it died within the first month or so that it was out. People stopped playing it. Its player count is absolutely abysmal because if you take a look right here, all-time peak 13,459. But guess what the 24-hour peak has been revolving around for a while now? 143 24-hour peak with 115 playing 2 hours ago, and it has been very similar for the past few weeks. I mean, this is back 3 months and it's been a very similar player count. I mean, there was a huge decline in February, which is a pattern that you're going to notice because the more people realized that Sweet Baby Inc. was involved in this stuff, they started to catch on and they stopped being interested in these games. Alan Wake 2, for example, a lot of people were wondering if that game was going to be profitable, but it says right here, Alan Wake 2 has not turned a profit 6 months in and there's no Steam release in sight, but Remedy says it's in control. Sure, it is Remedy. And of course, we have to recognize the games that do make a profit before we go into the games that don't. Of course, Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 swings past 10 million copies sold, right? But the problem with this is that they are just now crossing the threshold of profitability. It said that right near the beginning of its launch, it made about 5 million copies sold, but over 100 days later, and its sales have significantly declined. They're just now reaching profitability, and Sony hasn't even confirmed it. They're just teetering over the line of profitability after so long that this game has been on the market. It's supposed to be one of the most popular games that Sony has to offer. Now, I'd say that this game was a success because Sweet Baby Inc. didn't really get talked about until after people were already buying and completing this game, and that's when the conversation really started to take off. But it was around February that people started to pay more attention to this stuff, and the reason that I say that is because of the player activity for some of these games. Neocab, for example, mixed reviews, very positive, but only 1,800, with people criticizing why people even bothered to play this in the first place because of the cringy dialogue. But the player base, again, look what happened in February. It had a pretty consistent player base of like, I don't know, 11 people. You know, it wasn't that big of a deal. And then it fell off in February. I think people were trying it out because they realized that Sweet Baby Inc. was involved in it. It says right here how they were involved because of Brutus's Steam curator page used to be featured on the Sweet Baby Inc. website, which I believe they took down. I'm not sure if they put it back up, but you can check that out if you want to see for yourself. So yeah, that game was not doing well. What else? Tales of Kinzera, Zao, I just reported on that recently. The game has mostly positive, 290, but not a lot of people bothered playing this game. You can tell right here that their all-time peak was 200. I think it was released just a couple of weeks ago, but they haven't had a lot of luck with players. So, I mean, they peak out at about 45 people, and it's been going down ever since. In the last 30 days alone, they lost 32% of the people that were actually playing it. 45 people is not a lot of people. What else? Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew. This caused Me Games to shut down due to their costly issues going on internally. They had Sweet Baby Inc. heavily involved in the narrative of this game, and now they're shut down. So Sweet Baby Inc. involved game, not doing so hot. You want to see how many people are playing it? Check out the reviews, 3,150. Not much, okay? Because if you actually look at the player base itself, around February, it started to go down and fluctuate a bunch because people were seeing Sweet Baby Inc. caused so much damage to its studio that made it. And yeah, not doing too hot. An all-time peak of 3,900 people, which was more like at the start of this entire thing. But the 24-hour peak, below 200. Just people are not interested in it. You also have Goodbye Volcano High. Very similar situation. Not a lot of reviews. Some of them are positive, but their player base is not very high. A little around 200 people. It always seems to be 200-ish people, 100, 200. And that's just the all-time peak, 24-hour peak of 8 people. So yeah, not much going on with this game. And that's Sweet Baby Inc. involved as well. If you look at that Steam page, it says, from the Steam Curator page from Cabrutus, featured on Sweet Baby Inc. website. So there you go. What else? Battle Shapers, very positive. Only 300 positive reviews. I'm not sure how it can be sustained since it's basically an online multiplayer game. But guess how many people have been playing this? A 24-hour peak of 8 people. I wonder if it's like the same 5 or 6 or 8 people playing this at an all-time peak of 100. And again, what happened around February? It started to go down big time and then fluctuate a bunch because people were trying to keep it afloat. It had a little bit of a spike later on, but yeah, ultimately it is a failure. And I'm not sure how that game can even be sustained, especially with its live service features. But what else do we got? Sable. Okay, that came out a couple of years ago. Some of these games are recent. Some of them came out a couple of years ago, but this one had a lot of positive reviews at about 4,000. You know, that's okay. I heard the game isn't all that bad. Unfortunately, not a lot of people are playing it anymore, especially around the February timeframe where it started to dip big time and lose a bunch of the people that were playing it. It had a spike, of course, but it has been declining ever since at a 24-hour peak of 30. And this is what happens when you have Sweet Baby Inc. involved in your video game. People are just not interested. When Sweet Baby Inc. is involved, people are not going to buy the game. Around February, for a lot of these games that I just listed, that's when these things started to happen. That's when their player base started to disappear. They started losing huge percentages of their player base for a bunch of these games, including Sable and Suicide Squad, which is, you know, the worst. I mean, this is just the worst flop in video game history, and it is all thanks to Sweet Baby Inc. because of their deep involvement in that game's narrative design, its dialogue choices, the banter between characters, and the background bios of certain characters as well. But not just that, you know, they had a bunch of other problems. The way that they sacrificed Batman's character disrespected the fans and the lore of the universe, and the amount of effort that they put far more into the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspects of that video game rather than the actual quality of the game, which is why we got such a repetitive mess. So when it comes to articles like these that talk about Warner Brothers saying that their failure of Suicide Squad cost them to lose a bunch of money, it's not surprising that that happened, and that is a lot of money to lose. And I think that if Warner Bros. Is going to continue to make games, they should strongly reconsider working with consultancy agencies, especially if they want to succeed at any point. I mean, they're probably reevaluating what they're going to do with companies like these in the future. This is not a small loss for them. That's a lot of money to lose, and especially when it comes from one of your top video game developers. I mean, this is a disgrace, an embarrassment. They should be embarrassed. Warner Bros. Has dropped the ball big time. You don't just take like 10 years of Batman video game history and then flush it down the toilet, because now people are looking at you and they're looking at Sweet Baby Inc. and now they're starting to vote with their wallets. This is a clear case of voting with your wallet, and it is an effective strategy, one that has proved effective over and over again. And it's not going to end anytime soon, and it has way less of a chance of ending before Sweet Baby Inc. does. And that is all I've got for you guys in this video today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you haven't had the chance to like it and share it with your friends, that would be awesome. And hey, if you're feeling ultra spicy, consider subscribing to my channel so that you're always up to date on what kind of thing I've got going on. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Later. Meow meow.